I'm Alicia, 32 years old, and one quiet evening turned my entire world upside down. I had just ended what felt like a routine call with my parents when I realized they hadn't hung up. Their voices crackled through my phone, sharp and unfiltered as they spoke with my sister. My father's tone was cold, almost mechanical. Living with her is awful, but we're only staying because of her money. Before I could even process it, my sister's laugh cut through the air, cruel, mocking, as if she had known this truth all along. My hand gripped the phone so tightly it hurt my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break free from my chest. The room spun, my stomach twisted, yet I didn't cry or scream. I just sat there, frozen as every word carved itself into me. They thought I was gone oblivious when in reality I was hearing their betrayal in real time. Each second stretched into an eternity. My parents, the people I trusted most in this world, saw me not as a daughter, but as a bank account. My sister's laughter echoed in my head, each note mocking me, each sound, confirming how little I truly mattered to them. I sat on my couch long after the call ended, staring at the dark screen of my phone, replaying the moment again and again. Had it always been this way? Had every kind word been laced with calculation? I didn't have the answers. All I knew was that nothing could erase what I had just heard. Those words had drawn a line I could never step back over. They changed everything. Before I continue, I want to hear from you. Have you ever uncovered something about your family that shattered the way you saw them? Share your story in the comments. I want to know how you dealt with the weight of betrayal and what it taught you about trust. The next morning, I poured coffee, like nothing had changed. The kitchen smelled of toast and bacon, same as always, but every move felt like acting in a play I hadn't rehearsed. I set plates on the table, flipped pancakes, and wiped down counters, my hands steady despite the storm in my head. I had to keep it together, had to watch them without giving myself away. My dad shuffled in, grabbing a mug without looking at me. His eyes darted to the newspaper, avoiding mine like he knew I'd heard something I shouldn't. Morning, he mumbled, barely audible before burying his face in the sports section. I nodded, forcing a smile, and watched him sip his coffee too fast, like he was in a hurry to be anywhere else. My mom followed, her voice bright and fake, chatting about a neighbor's new car. "Isn't it fancy?" she said, laughing too loud, her hands fussing with a napkin. I agreed, my voice calm, but my stomach twisted. She was trying too hard, overcompensating for something. Then my sister Melissa slouched in, glued to her phone, barely grunting a hello. Her thumbs flew across the screen, probably scrolling through social media or texting someone about her failed clothing line. She didn't even glance at the breakfast I'd made. I kept moving, clearing dishes, but my eyes were sharp, catching every detail. Dad's fidgeting, Mom's forced cheer, Melissa's indifference. They felt like strangers wearing familiar faces. I'd always thought we were close, a family that shared everything. 3 years ago, I'd bought this big house in Lexington, Kentucky, so we could all live together. After my grandfather passed, I inherited enough to cover the mortgage and their bills, groceries, utilities, even Mom's shopping sprees. They'd moved in grateful, or so I thought. Dad had retired early, Mom too, and Melissa, a few years older, had leaned on me since her business tanked. I'd paid for everything, no questions asked, believing it was what families did. But now every memory felt tainted. Had they always seen me as a bank account? I thought back to last month when Dad asked about my savings, his tone casual but probing. Or when Mom pushed me to treat them to a fancy dinner, her smile too wide. Melissa never offered to chip in, always claiming she was between jobs. I'd brushed it off, thinking they were just struggling. Now their actions looked different, calculated. While scrubbing a pan, I pulled out my phone and opened a note app. I typed, "Dad avoids eye contact." "Mom's too cheerful." "Melissa doesn't care." I added more times. Dad asked about my investments. Mom's sudden interest in my work bonuses. Melissa's endless phone scrolling. Each detail felt like a puzzle piece, forming a picture I wasn't ready to see. I didn't know what they were hiding, but I'd find out. Later that day, I caught Melissa sneaking a glance at my laptop left open on the counter. She closed it quickly when I walked in, muttering about checking the weather. My gut churned. Something was off. I kept my routine, drove to my software job, and coded through meetings, but my mind was elsewhere. I remembered last Christmas when I'd given Mom a new coat she'd wanted. She'd hugged me, called me her rock, but now those words felt hollow. Dad had clapped my shoulder, proud, he said, of my success. Was it pride or greed? Melissa had barely thanked me for the cash I'd slipped her for business expenses. I'd thought I was helping, but maybe I was just their meal ticket. By evening, I sat in my room, phone in hand, scrolling through my notes. I added another: Melissa checked my laptop today. I didn't confront them yet. I needed more than suspicions. I'd wait, and dig deeper. They thought I was clueless, but I was wide awake now. This house, my house, wasn't a home anymore. It was a stage, and I was done playing their game. By Wednesday, I started noticing things I'd ignored before. The way Dad kept circling back to my finances, his questions, sharp and probing, felt different now. At breakfast, he leaned across the table, coffee mug in hand, and asked, "How's that investment account doing, Alicia?" His tone was casual, but his eyes flicked away too fast, like he was fishing for something. I shrugged, said it was fine, and changed the subject to the weather. He didn't push, but the air felt heavy, like he was waiting for me to slip up. I watched him later, flipping through channels on the living room TV, his fingers tapping nervously. It wasn't just a one-time thing. Last week he'd asked about my work bonuses, and the month before he wanted details on my savings. I'd thought he was just being a concerned parent. Now it felt like he was keeping score. Mom was no better. She came home that afternoon with shopping bags, designer purses, a silk scarf, shoes that cost more than my monthly car payment. "Just a little treat," she said, smiling brightly as she unpacked them on the kitchen counter. I nodded, but my mind raced. Those weren't little anything. I'd seen her splurge before: new dresses, fancy kitchen gadgets. But this was excessive even for her. She caught me staring and laughed, brushing it off. "You work so hard, Alicia. We deserve to enjoy it too." Her words stung, like she thought my money was theirs to spend. I didn't call her out, just kept my face neutral, but inside I was adding it up. Melissa was the worst. She hadn't worked in months, claiming her fashion business was on hold. I found her sprawled on the couch, phone in hand, scrolling through social media instead of looking for a job. "Anything new with your designs?" I asked, keeping my voice light. She barely looked up, muttering, "Not yet, too busy." Busy with what? Posting selfies and liking posts. I remembered when she'd begged me for a loan to start her brand. Money I'd given without hesitation. Now her laziness glared at me, a sign I'd missed for too long. I started digging that evening, pulling out a stack of bills from the drawer in my home office. Utility bills, credit card statements, restaurant receipts. They were all in my name, paid from my account. I hadn't thought twice about it before. I just wanted to keep the family comfortable. But as I flipped through, the numbers didn't add up. A $500 dinner at a steakhouse I'd never been to. A $2,000 charge for boutique clothing I didn't own. A subscription for a streaming service I didn't use. My hands shook as I spread the papers across my desk, each one a question mark. Who was spending this? Mom's bags flashed in my mind. Dad's questions. Melissa's endless scrolling. I jotted down the charges in my phone next to the notes I'd started Monday. The list was growing, and so was the knot in my stomach. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it. Had they always been like this? I thought of family dinners, Mom's warm hugs, Dad's proud smiles when I landed my tech job. Were those real, or just part of the act Melissa used to confide in me about her dreams, her failures? Now she felt like a stranger, someone who saw me as a means to an end. I wanted to believe they loved me, not just my bank account, but the evidence was piling up. I didn't have proof yet, not the kind I could hold up and demand answers for, but the signs were screaming. Later that week, I caught Mom slipping a credit card statement into her purse, her movements quick like she didn't want me to see. "Just organizing," she said when I raised an eyebrow. I didn't buy it. At dinner, Melissa complained about her phone being too slow, hinting she needed a new one. Dad chimed in, suggesting I could help out since I was doing so well. I smiled tightly, said I'd think about it, and excused myself to my room. Alone, I opened my note app again, typing "Mom hit a statement. Melissa wants a new phone. Dad's pushing again." I wasn't ready to confront them, not without something solid. That Friday, I sat alone in my office replaying their words. Not the ones from the call, I pushed those out of my mind, but the countless times they'd nudged me to open my wallet. I stared at my computer screen, code blurring as memories sharpened. Last summer, Mom had insisted on a family vacation to the Smoky Mountains, saying it'd be good for us. I'd paid for the cabin, the meals, even the gas, while she smiled and called it bonding. Dad had pushed me to cover their car repairs, claiming they were short on cash. I'd handed over thousands, thinking I was helping. Melissa was the boldest, always asking for just a little to keep her fashion dreams alive. I'd funded her website, her fabric orders, her marketing. None of it ever panned out. Each memory felt like a brick, building a wall between the family I thought I had and the truth. I couldn't stay in that office surrounded by lines of code that made more sense than my life. I grabbed my jacket and drove to a coffee shop downtown where I'd arranged to meet my friend Christine. She was already there, sipping a latte, her laptop open to some graphic design project. I slid into the booth, and before I could stop myself, the story spilled out: the call, my parents' betrayal, Melissa's cruel laugh. Christine's eyes widened, then softened. "Alicia, that's awful," she said, reaching for my hand. "You don't deserve that." Her voice was steady, grounding me. She didn't sugarcoat it, just listened, then leaned forward. "You're smart. Don't let them play you. Get the facts, protect yourself." I nodded, her words cutting through the fog in my head. She didn't push me to feel better or pretend it wasn't serious, she just gave me clarity. I left the coffee shop feeling lighter, like I could breathe again. Driving home, I started picking apart old memories, ones I'd buried under the weight of family loyalty. Growing up, Mom and Dad had always put Melissa first. When she wanted art lessons, they paid for them, even though we were scraping by. When I got into college, they barely celebrated, too busy bailing Melissa out of a failed modeling gig. I'd worked my way through school, coding late nights while Melissa partied, and leaned on their support. I thought I'd moved past that thought. Buying the house in Lexington meant we were equals now. But the more I remembered, the clearer it became. They'd always seen her as the star, me as the safety net. It wasn't love driving their choices, it was convenience. I pulled into the driveway, my resolve hardening. I needed answers, not just suspicions. Back in my home office, I opened my laptop and logged into my bank account. I'd checked bills before, but this time I'd dig deeper: every transaction, every transfer, every withdrawal. I pulled up statements going back 6 months, my fingers flying over the keyboard. I wasn't sure what I'd find, but I knew it'd be more than vague receipts. If they were using me, there'd be a trail. Dad's questions about my investments, Mom's shopping bags, Melissa's endless excuses, they weren't random. I started a new note on my phone, labeling it evidence. Over the weekend, I logged into my bank account. My home office was quiet, the only sound the hum of my laptop as I pulled up the financial dashboard I'd ignored for too long. I'd been paying for everything: house, utilities, Mom's shopping, Melissa's dreams, but I'd never looked closely at where the money went. Now I clicked through transactions, my heart sinking with every line. There they were, transfers, dozens of them, from my savings to an account I didn't recognize. Thousands of dollars sent in chunks over months, labeled consulting fees or miscellaneous. I cross-checked the dates. Some matched the times Melissa had pitched new ideas for her clothing line, others lined up with Mom's treats. My parents had access to my secondary account for household expenses, but this was different. They hadn't asked, hadn't mentioned a word. I scrolled further, my fingers trembling. A $4,000 transfer last month, another $2,500 just 2 weeks ago. I opened the account details and saw the recipient, a business registered under Melissa's name. My sister's failed fashion venture, the one she swore was almost ready to relaunch, was being funded by my money. I leaned back, the truth hitting me like a slap. They weren't just spending, they were funneling my inheritance to prop up her pipe dream. I felt sick, betrayed, but I needed to hear it from them. Sunday morning, I found Mom in the kitchen chopping vegetables for lunch. I kept my voice steady, casual. "Hey, Mom, I was looking at some bank statements. Saw some big transfers. Know anything about them?" She froze, knife hovering over a carrot, then smiled too quickly. "Oh, those. Just some gifts for Melissa, to help her get back on her feet." Her eyes didn't meet mine, darting to the counter instead. "Gifts," I pressed, stepping closer. "Thousands of dollars without asking me." She laughed, a nervous edge to it. "Alicia, don't make a big deal. It's family we share, right?" Her words were light, but they felt like a dodge. A lie wrapped in warmth. I nodded, pretending to let it go, but my mind was racing. She was covering something, and I wasn't buying it anymore. I didn't confront Dad or Melissa yet. I needed to be sure to protect what was mine. That afternoon, I drove to a local bank branch in Lexington. The teller, a kind woman with glasses, walked me through opening a new savings account, one only I could access. I sat in her office signing forms, my phone buzzing with a text from Melissa. "Can we talk about my next collection?" I ignored it, focusing on the paperwork. Back home, I logged in again and transferred half my inheritance, 6 figures money from my grandfather's estate, into the new account. It felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. I updated the passwords on my other accounts, locking my parents out of the secondary one. They'd notice soon, but I'd be ready. By Sunday night, I sat at my desk, staring at the new account balance. The transfers to Melissa's business weren't just careless, they were deliberate, a betrayal planned behind my back. Mom's lie about gifts confirmed it. I thought of all the times I'd trusted them, handed over money believing we were a team. Now I saw the truth: they'd used me, and Melissa was in on it. My resolve hardened. I wasn't just protecting my money, I was protecting myself. I opened my note app, adding one last entry: "Mom lied about the transfers. They're stealing." I didn't know how I'd face them, but I knew I would. Soon. Sunday dinner started normally until I spoke up. The dining room smelled of roasted chicken, and plates clinked as Mom passed the mashed potatoes. Dad carved the meat, his knife steady, while Melissa scrolled her phone, barely touching her food. I sat across from them, my fork resting on my plate, my pulse racing. I'd planned this all day, rehearsing the words in my head. The evidence transfers, lies. Hidden statements was stacked in my mind like a deck of cards. I couldn't eat, couldn't pretend anymore. I set my napkin down, took a breath, and said, "I heard your call last week. You didn't hang up. I know what you really think of me." Silence hit the table like a hammer. Dad's knife stopped mid-slice. Mom's smile froze, and Melissa's phone dropped to her lap. "What are you talking about?" "Alicia," Mom asked, her voice high and shaky, and I kept my eyes on hers. "You said living with me is awful, but you're staying for my money." Melissa laughed like it was a joke. Dad coughed, setting his knife down. "It was just talk, sweetheart," he said, his tone too soft, like he was soothing a child. "We didn't mean it." Mom nodded quickly. "We were joking, Alicia. You know we love you." Their words felt rehearsed, hollow, like lines from a bad script. I turned to Melissa, waiting. She stared at her plate, then let out a sharp, dismissive laugh. "You're blowing this out of proportion," she said, rolling her eyes. That laugh, that smirk, it was the same one from the call, and it set my blood boiling. I pushed my chair back, standing, joking. "Then explain the thousands you transferred to Melissa's business without asking me." Mom's face paled and Dad's jaw tightened. "That was for family," Mom stammered. "We thought you'd want to help." I cut her off. "Help? You lied, Mom. You called it a gift when I asked. I trusted you, all of you, And you've been using me. Melissa scoffed, crossing her arms. You're so controlling, Alicia. Always acting like you're above us. Her words stung, but I wasn't done. I pulled out my phone, opened a social media app, and held up a screenshot. Controlling like this post. Melissa calling me a stingy control freak who hoards her money. I'd found it that morning, a public post on her profile trashing me to her followers. Mom gasped. Dad looked away, and Melissa's smirk faded. I tossed the phone on the table, the screenshot glaring up at them. I saw the transfers, the lies, the post. I'm done being your bank. Dad tried again, his voice louder. Alicia, calm down. We're family. We don't mean harm. But I was past calming down. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't mock you behind your back. I looked at each of them, Dad's guilty eyes, Mom's trembling hands, Melissa's defiant stare. I want you out of my house. All of you. By tomorrow. Mom's fork clattered to her plate. You can't mean that, she whispered. Melissa laughed again, bitter this time. Good luck living alone, Alicia. You'll miss us. I didn't flinch. I'll manage. Pack your things. They sat there stunned as I walked to my room. My heart pounded, but my steps were firm. I'd given them everything, my home, my money, my trust, and they'd thrown it back in my face. Melissa's post was the final straw, proof she'd never seen me as a sister, just a resource. I locked my door, sat on my bed, and opened my note app. I typed, "They're leaving. I'm free." The house was still mine, and I'd make sure it stayed that way. They could try to talk their way out, but I'd had enough. Monday morning, the house felt empty. The dining room table where I'd confronted them last night stood bare. No plates, no voices. My dad, my mom, and Melissa had packed their things and left by dawn, their suitcases rolling out the door, while I stayed in my room, avoiding goodbyes. I walked through the living room, noticing the gaps. Mom's favorite throw blanket gone, Dad's reading glasses missing from the coffee table, Melissa's charger no longer tangled on the couch. They'd moved to a small rental apartment across Lexington, a detail I'd overheard Mom mention to a friend on the phone as they loaded the car. The silence in the house was deafening, but it carried a strange relief, like shedding a weight I'd carried too long. My phone buzzed as I made coffee. A text from Mom. Alicia. We're sorry. We never meant to hurt you. Can we talk? Then one from Dad. You're overreacting, sweetheart. Let's fix this. Melissa's was shorter. You didn't have to kick us out. Call me. Their words felt like a tug pulling at the part of me that still wanted a family. But I saw through them now. The apologies were too quick, too polished, like they were trying to reel me back in. I set the phone down, leaving their messages unanswered. I'd heard enough of their excuses at dinner, their weak claims of joking and family sharing. I wasn't falling for it again. By noon, I sat in a lawyer's office downtown, a small firm recommended by a coworker. The lawyer, a woman with sharp eyes and a notepad, listened as I explained the transfers, the lies, the social media post. You need to secure your assets, she said, jotting down notes. We'll draft a cease and desist letter for any further unauthorized access and review your property rights. I nodded, signing paperwork to start the process. My house, my inheritance, they were mine, and I'd make sure no one touched them again. The lawyer's calm efficiency grounded me, a reminder that I was taking control, not just reacting. Back home, I stood in the kitchen staring at the spot where Mom had chopped vegetables, where Melissa had scrolled her phone. The freedom was real. I could breathe without their judgment, their demands. But my heart ached for what we'd lost. I remembered Dad teaching me to ride a bike, Mom baking my birthday cakes, even Melissa braiding my hair when we were kids. Those moments felt so far away now, tainted by their betrayal. I didn't cry, but the pain sat heavy, a quiet reminder of the family I'd thought we were. I opened my laptop, checked my new bank account, and saw the balance I'd protected. It wasn't just money, it was my future, and I'd fight for it. 6 months later, I moved into a new apartment. The place was smaller than my old house in Lexington, but every corner was mine clean, quiet and free of secrets. I'd sold the house, pocketing the profit, and set up my life on my terms. My days revolved around coding projects, late-night debugging sessions, and coffee runs that didn't carry the weight of family drama. I was living for myself, not for anyone else's expectations. Christine came by one evening bringing takeout and a playlist of old songs we used to blast in college. "This place suits you, Alicia," she said, grinning as we unpacked noodles on my new couch. We laughed, swapping stories about work and her latest design client, no heavy confessions or advice needed. It was just friendship, easy and real, the kind I'd almost forgotten. I heard about my dad and my mom through a mutual acquaintance. They were scraping by in their rented apartment, no more lavish dinners or designer bags. Dad had taken a part-time job at a hardware store, and Mom was selling her old jewelry online to cover bills. Their lifestyle had crumbled without my money to prop it up. I didn't feel vindicated, just distant, like they were characters from a story I'd left behind. Melissa's fall was harder. Her social media posts, the one calling me controlling and stingy, had backfired. Friends and followers turned on her, calling out her entitlement. Her fashion business, already shaky, collapsed completely when her last investor pulled out. I saw her profile go silent, no more selfies or pitches, just a ghost of the image she'd tried to sell. Looking back, I learned to trust my gut. That uneasy feeling, the one I'd pushed down for years, was right all along. I'd let love blind me, thinking family meant loyalty no matter what. But loyalty doesn't mean ignoring lies or letting people drain you. Protecting my worth, my money, my peace, my boundaries was the hardest but best choice I made. To anyone listening to my story, thank you for sticking with me. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done? Share below, and let's keep this real.